Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Module 5. The Here and Now and Group as a Whole is our topic for this week. This is your instructor, Ildiko Ran, and this is our class Group Theory and Practice. Welcome. So, why do we talk about the here and now? I know I have been talking about the here and now already quite a bit in the previous modules of this class. Really, the here and now and the group as a whole, the aspects of group therapy are the most important aspects of group dynamics and the underlying reasons why, how we can harvest all the benefits that a group offers and how we can bring that into the therapeutic environment. So I just want to point out a few more things about the here and now. And first of all, the here and now facilitates all those therapeutic factors that we have been talking about beforehand. It facilitates the development of the social microcosm. It facilitates the interpersonal learning, the development of bonding and group cohesion. And also it accelerates being present and working on your personal and interpersonal dynamics. So without working in the here and now, we would be telling stories about our life. And while one member is talking, maybe some of the other group members would be able to relate to that or empathize or sympathize with that group member who is talking. But really, there is some kind of deadness in groups where that is happening. And sometimes it does happen, and it will happen in your groups, even when you are trying not to stay in the out and there, but you're trying to bring it into the here and now, but it's still not working. So you will have groups. I've had many groups like that. And it always plays some kind of role. There is some kind of reason why that is happening, and then you can process that later. So again, it's not about the failures that we go through as group leaders, but it's more about repairing it and then learning from that. And not only for us as therapists, but also for the whole group, because without allowing some resistance to take place, without allowing some not so therapeutic things happening in the group, if we are always just doing everything perfectly well, then we will not be able to help our clients to see how they can overcome failures or less than perfect situations. So again, it's all in the repair and processing it. But again, so in the here and now, when we keep bringing it back into the here and now, the content of what is happening in the stories of our clients, of our group members, we will help them develop a stronger bonding and cohesion. And as people are relating to each other in the here and now, there is going to be much more interpersonal learning. And it's not about the interpersonal learning is not about learning about the other person's outside stories, but how I feel right now about myself in this group, how I feel about the other people in the group. So it's about the here and now group dynamics. And this last point about accelerating being present and working on personal and interpersonal dynamics, it is an aspect of being in the here and now, because that is really how we learn about ourselves. It's possible to learn also by outside stories, but it's much faster. And that's why we as group therapists, we really have to be on top of our game when our goal is to bring it into the here and now, because regression is going to happen faster, the therapeutic process will go much faster. So we also have to be prepared that this is what we want, that this is what we get. So a few words about the process versus the content, which again I already talked about and you already read about it. So in psychoeducational and support groups, you will focus more on the content. You will want to exchange information. You will want your group members learn what they are there to learn. But when we are in a process group, when we are in a therapy group that focuses on the process, we will be thinking about not about what people are saying, but how they are saying it, and why they are saying it. Why now? Why not? If somebody is not talking, why that person is not talking? In what way, in what manner the person is talking? In what way and what manner other people are listening? So as you are listening to the person who is talking in a process group, also in other groups, but especially in a process group, you want to keep kind of scanning the room. Uh, you want to really just check in, looking at all the group members, what's happening in the room, because your responsibility is the whole group, not only that one person who is talking, or not the two people who are exchanging some kind of um, relating in the group, but everybody else is relating to the person who is talking. And sometimes also people who are not talking, they are relating to each other, either through eye contact or other various ways. And you, as the group facilitator, you want to be aware of all those little zingers that are going off in the room. And yeah, and that's, of course, it isn't impossible to task to pay attention to everything. And you will have to pick what are the things that you want or you can pay attention to. And sometimes you will notice things and you will not name them. It's not necessarily a demand of a group facilitator to actually name all those little events that are happening in the room. You will have to pick and choose what you are addressing. But it is part of your goal that you want to be aware of things that are happening. Group, as you all know, is a powerful experience, and people actually do not expect to enjoy or have powerful experiences in groups. You might have already experienced this as well as group facilitators, or if you have been trying to recruit people into your groups, that people usually don't want to join groups. People are very often afraid of groups, or they say that, oh, I'm not good, I cannot open up in a group. So there will be some hesitation, and there will be some sometimes very uh, open, strong hesitation to join your group. And that's where our psychoeducational piece comes in, about group dynamics and about the benefits that they might experience in the group. And of course, we never force people to stay in a group, and we never force people to do everything that they are asked to do in group. It's always their choice. If there is anything that's so even if you are doing a mindfulness exercise or like a body scan, there are people for whom, let's say with some trauma history, if that body scan evokes some personal painful experiences, it might be good for the whole group to go through the body scan, but that one person might not be able to do it, and it might be harmful for them. So you want to be, of course, aware of those situations, and very often it's enough that that person is just not can stay in the group, but is not going to do that specific exercise. For some people, it's enough if you ask everybody to close their eyes and doing a mindfulness exercise that way. For some people, it's enough if they just don't close their eyes. But for some people, they do not want to follow even the script. Let's say if you are following a script, going through a mindfulness exercise. And in very rare occasions, I haven't seen that many times, that a person needs to step out from the group. But that's really rare. I don't think that really happens. But you just want to be aware that you don't want to. You want to make sure that they know that they don't have to follow all the prompts that are happening in the group. So that's one of the things that people are hesitant to join groups. But they also, if they come to your group and they are not well educated about what to expect in a process group or a therapy group, they might expect information. They might expect that it's going to be a class where they will come and they will learn very specific information that you are going to provide. So again, if you are leading a process group or a therapy group, you will have to be very specific about that, and make sure that people understand that it's not a psychoeducational group. And even if people are not verbalizing their expectations, or maybe they didn't verbalize that they're really afraid to join the group, or they have had bad experiences beforehand, it can be a jarring experience for them to actually be in a group. And once the process group aspect starts, uh, it can be jarring for them, and you need to expect that as a leader. And I know sometimes myself I'm fault. I can, because I know the power of group, and I know how much people very quickly learn to appreciate process groups. But but sometimes I forget, or maybe I used to forget, that for some people it's really a difficult start, and it's they are not ready yet for all that exploration in the process, and they need time. So it's again important to prepare members prior to beginning the group. If you have any way to have any assessment sessions, it's very important to sit down and talk with the person beforehand, find out what are their goals for the group, if they have been in groups, if they have been in any group situation that has been traumatic for them. You want to know about them, about those situations. um, you want them to be able to ask their questions, so they would have the correct expectations for this group. You want to prepare them. And so how do we lead people into a process group? And most often what we say that we do it through our process comments. And the main question that the kind of the standard question that you want to have in mind is, how does it manifest here in this room? That is the way to pull members back into the here and now, which you will have to do quite often, because people tend to talk about their outside life, and they tend to want to share more background to their story than just the here and now, which is of course needed. There is a balance of that. I think I'm going to talk about that later today. But when we are sharing some process comments with others, when either as a member or as a facilitator, when you are responding to how a person is talking, or how a person is behaving in the group, both giving feedback and receiving feedback, it's very often our gut reaction is that comment is going to be critical. When we are giving feedback, we are afraid, or most of the time, I think. Of course, you can prove me wrong on this one. That whatever we are going to say, we are afraid that it will hurt the person. So we are trying to be careful, and that's what we learned when we were socialized. That we have to learn not to hurt the other person, and that's why very often we slip into giving these compliments to other people without really being helpful, because it's not a real honest feedback to the person. And then, of course, if a person receives feedback, very often it is heard in a critical way, which we have to constantly remind people and teach them through our role modeling, that it's not a critical, but it's rather just an honest feedback and a process comment in the room. So it can be anxiety provoking for both parties, the giver and the receiver of the process comments. And that's why it's really, we have to learn the nuances of process comments. And in society, there's always many possible interpretations of one's behavior. And what we learn in society, in our social engagements, that we are hiding behind that kind of that fog of, I'm doing something, but there could be many different interpretations or reasons or motivations for what I'm doing, and I'm sometimes happy that not everybody around me knows why I am doing certain things. And what we are trying to achieve here in a process group is exactly that. We would we would think about what are those motivations, because sometimes they are so hidden underneath that when I'm doing something, I'm not even aware why I'm doing. What are my motivations? Or maybe I'm in denial, or I would think that it's one motivation, but really there is something even deeper underneath, and it might be very clear to other people. So those are that's the process, what comment encouraging uh, to call out the members' behaviors, and maybe the word choices, or who they are talking to, or who they are trying to avoid when they are not talking. So with all those commenting on those aspects, we are helping that individual to see more what might be that underlying motivation. That they are really, that's why they are here in group, to learn those things about themselves. Uh, if this happens outside in your real life, you might have heard when you are in social engagements, when people hear that you are a therapist, and they think, oh, now you're going to analyze me, or sometimes some people say that, oh, there are just certain things I don't want to mention in my therapy because I don't want to think about it. I just want to do it. And that's absolutely called for in our lives, but in a process group, we are trying to actually overanalyze things, because that's what we are doing, and that's what will help us in our outside life to actually go through life with less pain, with more balance, without having to think about it. I'm not saying that in your real life you will want to always process and think about your motivations, but in fact, when you are in the process group, it will be released. You will become a more balanced person, and then in your real life, it will be just second nature. This new you that maybe you achieved through participating in a process group. Oh, um, so the next slide is about the power in the process, and that's what I've been talking about. What we are hiding in our social life, and what it comes through as transparency, as naming those hidden, what's usually hidden. That's what makes it so powerful. And that's usually something that people are craving, or they're interested in understanding, especially if the result is going to be more understanding of the self, and a more balanced life, and the ability to live our life in a more balanced way. And I think Yalom brings up this point that it happened in childhood, maybe when your parents were giving you process comments, but that's really a one-way street, and it doesn't really happen in our real life, where it's with mutual consent we are giving and receiving this kind of feedback. It might happen that we are receiving it without asking for it, or sometimes we might give it without the other person asking for it. But in this therapy setting, everybody is there because they're asking for it. We're asking for giving and receiving it. And then just two more examples here, that if you are talking about your outside life, about something that maybe you are describing a relationship or an exchange with somebody that has happened with you, so it's good for the group to understand more about you through that little vignette or through that little story. But then the facilitator's job is to point out that really what's important here is that who here you feel that feeling towards, or how have you done it here, if you are talking about don't know, like lying, for example, in or being competitive in your outside life. If you're talking about that in your outside life, how have you done it here? Maybe in a milder form, or maybe very clearly, or maybe you are trying to hide it, but really uh, uh, bringing attention to that, the fact that if you are talking about it, there's a reason why you are talking about it, and it's not just storytelling. It has happened somehow in the here in this room, and you will engage people here in the room if you are talking about how it happened here or how it's happening here with these people. And this is another aspect. I think that it's important to remind ourselves on this next slide. It's about the primary task of the group, which is this processing, versus the secondary gratification of being in the group. The group bonding, what we were trying to encourage, that people would be bonding in our groups, and there would be this feeling of universality. And as the group group cohesion is happening, it will create an environment that satisfies some of our social needs. We like to be liked. I think we can say that about most of us, that we like that feeling safe and feeling comfortable and feeling understood and heard by other people. And even if we don't agree with everybody, or even if they don't agree with us, the group will create that safe environment where we learn how to be with people who we don't agree with, and how still have this strong intimacy among these members, even if they are not all our best friends. And in fact, that is why it's so strong, because we that is a satisfying feeling to know that we as human beings, we are capable for that feeling, this bonding. Yet, so yes, we do want to create this environment in our groups, but group members might start avoiding working on their actual interpersonal goals, because those would disrupt this pleasant group cohesion. So that is a tricky balance, and I just wanted to make sure that you paid attention to that in this chapter, that we always want to keep the therapeutic goals in the forefront. So while maybe not at the initial stages of group, because you do want to create this group cohesion, but once you arrive at the working stages of group, you want to keep that in mind. And actually it's a tangent from here, but that becoming friends, so outside of group, or socializing outside of group, that's why it's very important that we emphasize that we do not want that to happen, because being friends or being socially engaged with each other makes this spins this satisfying intimacy in the process group. It brings it to the outside, and it destroys something. It actually prevents from the group to continuing its work. And in the process group, in the room, you as the facilitator, you can emphasize that while there is this positive atmosphere here, and the bonding, and all this pleasant group feeling, it's very important to keep working. And usually in the group, by that time, by that stage, the group is mature enough, so they will understand what you are saying. But when they are out and about and making friends or socializing, it's almost impossible to recreate that working atmosphere, because it's nice. Okay, I don't want to say any more about that, but that's where it's very important again to emphasize, and no socializing, and not to become friends outside of group, but we'll just do it here in the group. The next slide talks about the process versus meaning, which is this double fold, or two layers to the process element of process groups. Sometimes you, the leader, want to disengage from the process. So while it is happening and you are calling people to to share their feelings and how they relate to other people. So that process is happening, but at some point you want to step away a little bit from that emotional engagement, and you want to bring the whole group with you into this more of an observing role, and you want to call attention to the themes, what are happening in the room. So this is that meta message of or looking from the outside, looking at the group, what's happening, and you want to bring their attention to the meaning of the recent transactions in the group. So what, or you can, that's when you can name the stages of where we are now, what's happening. Or people, maybe they're just thinking, they're just talking randomly, but you as the facilitator, you will start hearing those themes that are coming up. And it can be safety, it can be negotiating the task of the group, or it can be if something happened in somebody names like an outside event about something, let's say, has to do with grieving or separation, something that we know that it touches most people, and very often they would bring up their own interpretation of it without being very clearly related to the other person's story. So you as the facilitator, then you notice that theme and you just name it, and then usually that is enough for people to say, that's interesting, that's what's happening, and how does it sit with me. So even group members, let's say, who haven't talked until then, they would see like where that theme comes up for them, and that might call them to actually share something. So this makes the self-reflection more potent, and there is just more. There will be more potency in the process, because we are not only engaging in our immediate feelings, and we don't get so overwhelmed by the process, but sometimes by stepping out, it will help us individuals to practice our observing self, and then doing this dance a little bit, the back and forth, the going, being in the process and watching the process. Both elements are very helpful to actually further the development of the therapeutic effects of group. And again, it can be used in individual therapy as well, but in group it fits well with the frame. Also in individual therapy, you can name a theme or something that's happening in the room with the client, but there is more to it in a group, because there are different people and the different perspectives. And then even though the here and now interpretations are really always talking about the group as a whole, I want to talk a little bit before we finish this lecture for today. I want to talk a little bit about the group as a whole phenomena. So the group is the unit of change, even though the eventual therapeutic benefits will be seen in individual, in all the individual group members, but really we are talking about the group as a whole, as the unit of change. And you can use group as a whole interpretations, more or less what I just said about this, calling group members' attention to the themes that are coming up. And bridging is a wonderful technique that you can use. It comes from Lou Ormond, who I highly recommend. He really there are only two books that he wrote. Only one book, and then the other book is an edited version of a collection of his papers. And Lou Ormond is the founder of the modern analytic, or he's one of the founders of the modern analytic school. It's a very strong school of group therapy. It's a psychodynamic, has its origins in psychoanalysis, and they're a wonderful group of people and Ormond was the first the first group therapist who used this technique that he called bridging, when you involve other people in an exchange. So if there is one person who is sharing something, then you as the facilitator, you know your group members well enough that you know that there is somebody who, let's say this person is talking about being offended by someone else, but it's difficult for them to say that. So if I was offended, it's difficult for me to say. So it's not that the group therapist will grill me about why I couldn't respond to this offending person, but the group therapist might know that there is another person here in the room for whom it's difficult, and because that person is now not in the hot seat, it will. So the group facilitator can ask that person, so what do you think? What what does this person now feel? Your friend here who is on the hot seat, and it will take the attention a little bit away from me if I was on the hot seat, and it will be the other person who can really name my experience because she has a similar experience in life. She was going to talk about herself, she's going to talk about me, and if the offending person is also in the room, if that was a here and now event, then that person will have two people who are giving her the same feedback, him or her the same feedback. And that way, instead of just one person being in the hot seat, all three will be connected, and that just spreads in the group. If three people are already involved, then it's much easier to involve the other group members. So bridging is a nice technique. I might actually just share there is one chapter in Ormond's book that talks about bridging. So that is a very good basic technique to start group as a whole interpretation or work. And then the stages that we already talked about, that's definitely as a group as a whole phenomena. When you bring attention to what developmental stage the group is in, it is not an individual interpretation. It's not talking about only the individuals, but it's all over the group that will in return then benefit the individuals. And what I mentioned again, those themes that are coming up, those are definitely group as a whole aspects. Group as a whole, let's continue. I have about 4 more slides about group as a whole phenomena. So the unconscious forces that obstruct or promote effective group functioning are part of the group as a whole, and the inherent forces in the group that significantly influence the behavior, these are happening among the members. So when I name these forces, these unconscious forces, these are group unconscious, and these are all underlying forces in what's happening in a group. Bjorn was the first group therapist or group analyst who paid attention to these forces. And it's not part of this course to go through the history of group therapy, but he was the one who paid attention, who noticed that something is happening here as the group unconscious, and that's something that repeats itself in groups in general. It's the same idea as the developmental stages of group, that no matter what is the makeup of the group, what kind of people you are putting in a group, and what historical or cultural environment you put these people together, the group has its own dynamics, and there is an underlying unconscious dynamics that happens in groups, and this can obstruct the group functioning, or if you are aware of them and if you use them to the advantage of the therapeutic purposes of this group, then it will promote it, because you are riding on something that's so powerful that affects the whole group. But the first of all, the idea is that even if we don't see it or even if we don't pay attention to it, these forces will significantly influence the group members' behaviors. And that's why it's important to understand what's happening. And that's why I'm talking about it so much. Even if you're leading support groups or psychoeducational groups, that you would see what's happening underneath, or you would have a sense that something is happening underneath. If you're interested in Gestalt therapy, there is a whole big literature about modern Gestalt group therapy. I'm happy to provide more information about that if you're interested. They call it the field. That's the context, the environment, and the group as a whole phenomena fits very nicely into that therapeutic modality, into the Gestalt idea of the field and how we as individuals, we are part of the whole, and we exist through our relating, and we exist through that emerging relating and contact, through our contact boundaries with the field. So yeah, again, that is an interesting overlap between group theory and Gestalt. It matches really well, and it gives it does give this transpersonal aspects to this whole topic we are talking about. And just a few examples that we already talked about: the emerging roles and the scapegoating process. That's all part of these unconscious underlying inherent forces in group that's happening. And just noticing that that when you, as the group facilitator, you notice that these underlying forces are in service of the group development or the group cohesion, you do not actually need to comment on it. But when it's impeding the therapy, when you feel that it's an obstruction or it's an obstacle to the group development, that the group is stuck on something, that there is the elephant in the room that nobody is talking about, then you do want to comment on it. And that's the way you are going to release it. If everything is going fine, you don't have to say, oh, people, everything is going fine because, and you don't have to explain that why. You want to notice it, but you don't have to say it. But when the whole group is stuck because they don't understand what's happening, it can be, again, the aggression, the violence, or it can be it can be also attraction, though I think I talked about that before, that things that, or it can be finances, it can be any of those taboo topics that we have been socialized not to talk about. Any of those things can be the entry points into these obstacles that will actually lead us into this unconscious aspects of group dynamics. And that's what you do in your process comments. And that can be, of course, it can be a painful stage in the group's life. It can be difficult to bring up those things because there is a protective factor, like why we are not talking about something that's impeding our progress. It's because it's a survival technique. It's something that we learned not to talk about because it's safer not to talk about those things. So in a way, it's our in our best interest not to pay attention to those things. But if we don't pay attention, then we'll be just stumbling over it and we'll not go anywhere. So that's why when you name it, you have to buckle up and expect that it won't be easy, or it won't be easy for every group member. Okay, and so the group as a whole comments the purpose of them is to remove these obstacles that are obstructing the process. This is what I mentioned that I will mention later, and here we are talking about the here and now, the in-group events as opposed to the outside events. So even though the purpose is to really focus on the here and now and harvest all the benefits of that aspect of group therapy, but the outside events and the historical events, the stories that the group members bring in, they have a very important role we do need some background about our fellow group members. It's just very important that you, as the leader, you keep an eye on the balance, that once we had enough story from that outside, then you gently point that out to the person. And that's when you say those process comments that, I wonder how that manifests here, or have you thought about it, or who did you feel that way here? So those would be those process comments, or the comments that bring the person into the here and now. A very important aspect of your work, and actually you will learn that staying in the here and now and in the group as a whole, understanding, you will be able to prevent escalation. As part of the group phenomena, we know that when people come together in groups, there can be some anger or some emotional flooding happening, and that's when unfortunate events happen in groups, and we have everyday examples of that in everywhere in the world. And in what we do with that in group therapy is that, first of all, we are not shying away from it. We are encouraging the emotional content to come into the room. We encourage that when group members notice those feelings in themselves in relation to others, so that they would talk about, and that includes conflict. And when that comes up, and let's say a person becomes angry or overwhelmed with emotion, or somebody gets triggered in the group situation because, let's say, what comes up for them is the way they were traumatized earlier, like before, out in their outside life, that person can become overwhelmed, and their regular mechanisms can be triggered, and they might be loud. Of course, we don't let people physically go at each other. That's definitely out of the question. But even raising one's voice, or yelling at somebody in the group, that can be a sign of that escalation. And then you want to really hold tight onto your group as a whole interpretations, and you want to bring in all the other group members, and you want to see what's happening in the room, so all the different aspects would come out. And of course, this can be very difficult in doing it in the moment, but if you see that somebody, let's say, got really triggered and is yelling at another member, that person is getting absolutely overwhelmed, because most likely for both of them, that's an old pattern, what's happening in the moment with them. And you want to dilute the attention away from the content of what's happening between these two people. And the way you do that is, you're not encouraging now these two people to share their process, but you actually want to, that's when you can bridge it out. That's very, very important, that you know who is the person who is not very strongly triggered, but let's say feels with the person who is overwhelmed, and then that person can talk to this person's feelings. And while you calm down this person, you can tell them that it's not tolerated. You cannot raise your voice here. But let's hear from John, that he would tell us what he sees, what's happening in you, and then you can ask this member actually not to respond. Just listen how this other person sees him or her. And it can be difficult, and it's very helpful if you have a co-facilitator in these situations. And then you want to bring in as many people as you can, and people who would see as many parts of both parties, the angry one and the overwhelmed one. Well, both of them are overwhelmed, but because the person who who is so triggered, they are really now only focusing on one part of themselves. And what you want to do is to put that into context and call, if I have an angry part, then you want to call attention to my hurt part, and then I will calm down. That's kind of the idea. And that's how you can use process. Now, if you know other techniques, and because there are many other modalities that deal with this situation, of course you can use those. But this is how you can use the process element, bringing in other people's participation. In non-process groups, again, in support or psychoeducational peer-led groups, if you observe the emotional overheating or flooding, you just notice it and containing it by naming it and recommending individual therapy or other modes of processing it. And you have to name it then that this group is not an appropriate environment for it. So you definitely don't want any escalation in a support group or a psychoeducational group. But because you notice it, because you understand that in a different process environment you could process it, but you say that you have to bring it to your individual therapist, or if you know that person, that they have other support in the community, you can even meet with them late after your group is done, your support group, and you can make sure that they will get that support that they need. And so in summary, the here and now interventions are your best tools to keep the process going in the group. And group as a whole, awareness needs to be trained in a leader. Most likely you were not born with this awareness. Well, actually, I should take that back. I think we have been born with that, with the awareness, but not with the ability to name it. If you are observing groups or participating in them or leading them, those will be your best learning experiences. So the more you can observe, participate, and lead groups, the better, more effective group therapist you will become. Thank you for your attention today, and I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.